When the wind blows cold on the shores of Lake Erie, the Queen City moans her sad, lonely song. Her streets are empty, but for handfuls of scattered souls, scurrying to escape the chill. Most are gathered at the warm watering holes that garnish every street corner, offering respite for the weary. The air hangs thick and is warmed by the hot takes that resound from the wooden walls. We find ourselves on the doorstep of such a place, with the champions of mediocrity about to set off on another long-winded journey. The windows are already beginning to fog with the balmy bloviations. As the door creaks open, a rush of warm air ushers the velvet voices of the 716 Sports Podcast.
716 Sports Podcast Expansion Pack.
Just when you thought you'd had enough of us talking in our limited capacity, we decided to branch out and talk about more things you love and make you hate them too.
It's pretty obvious that I love video games, and this is like buying more guns in, this is downloadable content in Turok, Dinosaur Hunter, right? That's what the kids are playing these days, right?
Name drop.
Real hip.
You getting pwned in Counter-Strike? Are you fragging people in Bioshock? Huh? You getting the star in Mario? That's what we're talking about here.
Joke's on you, Mario was actually still cool.
All right.
Shut up.
All right.
I don't know if you know what you're talking about right now. Get to the stuff you know what you're talking about.
Does it sound like
think Bill knows
we're expanding
far
our
more than I've ever
horizons.
admit.
Welcome to the video game podcast. No, we're just kidding. We're going to talk about the NCAA tournament, of course.
What a time of year to be doing that.
It's the greatest sporting event in North America annually. Of course, besides the Grey Cup, but that we're not going to do that this year.
Stay tuned for our Grey Cup coverage next spring, though.
Go Ticats. And here we are. And, Jeff, we need to talk about how horrific the TBS show was last night, because once you take things off of network and go to cable, they all go to shit.
Yeah, Bill, to steal a quote of yours from earlier that I think really encapsulates the situation, they took the most unfuckable programming in American sports history, and they went ahead and they fucked it right on up there.
Unfuckable.
There you go. Unfuckable.
Yeah, see, I would never use such crass language like that. I can't understand why you would quote me on that. But, yeah, so the NCAA tournament for, I don't know, since I was born, was just a show where they're like, all right, here are the brackets. And then they give you the brackets. And then last night, they took Greg Gumbel and Ernie Johnson, put them 4 miles away from each other on separate sound stages.
Desync the audio by a solid 70 seconds.
The poor syncing up there by our friends at Turner's Broadcasting. And then they proceeded to run through all the teams that are in the bracket alphabetically, starting with all the automatic qualifiers, just in case you stepped away from your couch, went over to pet your dog, grabbed yourself a milkshake from the fridge, and came back and, lo and behold, hey, Texas Southern, still back. They're back. Mike Davis. Let's go Tigers. And then many of the bubble teams were in the first couple of letters of the alphabet.
Yeah, in a draft, in a show where it's supposed to be surprising that Alabama and Arizona State were some of your last 4 in. They are on your first line of your first slide.
Right. So there's no drama. There's just, here they are.
Yeah.
Go Sun Devils.
And
great.
I think a lot of the viewers were so taken back too. Like they got to they passed the L's and they'd be like, as you may have noticed, we're past L's, so that means Louisville's not. It's like, no, I didn't notice that because it's not like organically happening. Like you just flipped across the entire length of the room. Now Charles Barkley's here for some reason with his Pizza Hut, and we're all invested in what's going on the other side of the room over there.
Ernie Johnson was straight throwing shade at Notre Dame. That was pretty sweet. I enjoyed that. As a St. Bonaventure alum and was unaware that they were going by the ST abbreviation rather than the full name, that got a little hairy there for a minute, I'm not going to lie. But thankfully the Bonnies made it. And then, of course, they will not die. You cannot kill them. Motherfucker, Syracuse got into the goddamn tournament again.
Conference recognition.
Oh, my God.
It's ridiculous.
If they didn't play in the ACC, I don't think they'd make it in.
Who figured a win over Clemson and a 19-point loss in your home state of Brooklyn, New York, would cause them to get an at-large bid? My boss at work, who is a Syracuse alum and goes at least once a year to the Carrier Dome, is like, I have no interest in watching that game on Wednesday night. Like, just none. Doesn't care. Can't blame him. But we do have a local flair for local teams. Buffalo, St. Bonaventure, and Syracuse all that have pretty reasonable followings in this area. All of them are in the tournament, and two of them, Syracuse and St. Bonaventure, will be playing in the first four. We might as well just start there. UCLA, St. Bonaventure on Tuesday, Arizona State, Syracuse on Wednesday. I will be having a rooting interest in one of those.
What do you think the status is? I know it's kind of up in the air for Stockard to be available to play at least some role for Bonaventure, and how key do you think that is for them especially the first four games?
Yeah, well, he's their third best player, and it is literally a day-to-day situation where if they had gotten a Friday bracket draw in the main, I think that Stockard is playing at 80 to 85%. As it stands, he's going to try and go. We're recording on Monday night. He's going to try and go against UCLA on Tuesday night. He's not going to be close to 100%. If you get 70% out of him, I think you're okay. The big concern for me as a Bonnie's fan is Jalen Adams no-showed the A-10 tournament. They won against Richmond in the quarters, and that was fine, but kind of a real struggle and a disappointing performance against Davidson in the semis. And I'm not going to be super... I mean, the guy was co-conference player of the year, but he's a huge contributor. But if they could stop Matt Mobley in that game, then Jalen Adams wasn't able to step up. So it'll be very interesting to see. But Adams and Mobley, dynamic guard play for the Bonnies. Of course I'm going to pick them to get out of this because I haven't come this far and gotten over 2016 to then all of a sudden be the second team and completely eliminated from the bracket. So I'll be pulling for Bonaventure over UCLA, of course. But I think we'll see. It's a pretty tough. It's a very interesting first four game.
A healthy Bonaventure, I think, is for sure the best team in the first four out of those 11 seeds that are playing.
It certainly feels like it. UCLA is kind of hit and miss. Syracuse, I just don't think Syracuse is that great.
I think Syracuse
of a team.
is actually terrible.
And Arizona State is living off of wins over Xavier and Kansas, which, yes, two of the four seeds. Don't get me wrong. Also happened in December.
Yeah,
so
go for number 3 in the country to fall down as precipitously as they have into a play-in game. That's a team that, I mean, I think a lot of Buffalo fans are hoping to get the double whammy, to get a higher seed for UB than they did, and to also hope that Arizona State missed the bubble so they can kind of point and laugh at Bobby Hurley for turning and going to Arizona State. And instead, Arizona State gets in, and Buffalo got. That might be... I was talking about this with my buddy who graduated from UB a couple years ago about what the worst matchup could be for UB to have in the first round. And they're a team that shoots the ball really well. They defend well. They're just not a very big team. The thing that you don't want if you're UB in the first round is a team that has a dynamic, dominant, inside player. And boy howdy, did they draw the team. Probably underseeded Arizona, too, with DeAndre Ayton, who might be the best player coming out of college this year, who just looked like a man amongst boys in the Pac-12 tournament. It was insane watching some of those guys at USC, UCLA, Oregon try to guard him.
Yeah, I think that's right, DeAndre Ayton. If it's not for this Doncic guy, that's sort of still somewhat of an unknown out of Europe. I think if you're talking about an NBA team that's looking to make an impact player right away, why don't you go after the 7-footer with range? And Ayton, he's got unicorn kind of feel to him. He's along the lines of like a Joel Embiid or a Kristaps Porzingis, and just the unique skill set that he has. And yeah, disappointing for Buffalo. I think a lot of people thought that they were going to be a little bit higher. 11 probably was pushing it a little bit, but I certainly think that they would have been a trendy 5-12 upset candidate. As it stands, they get sent out west, and they're going to be playing in Boise, where they have
the thriving metropolis of the Northwest,
Taco Bell Arena in beautiful Boise State campus. It is a tough matchup for the Bulls. It just doesn't seem like doesn't seem super realistic, and yeah, that entire and we can kind of move to a couple of the brackets here, and might as well start in the South with number 1 Virginia, but man, getting no favors with their top 4 seeds out there. Cincinnati, Tennessee, Arizona, and even down to 5 with Kentucky. I mean, that is a pretty stacked group of 5 there.
I think Arizona is underseeded as a 4. I think Kentucky is underseeded as a 5. I think those teams are a 3 and a 4 probably. Could shuffle around a little bit. Virginia's going to have a hard time getting to Cincinnati, Tennessee, whoever wins that bottom half of the region, because they're going to have to go through feasibly an Arizona-Kentucky winner. Kentucky, just that team that always is there. They always get hot at the right time. They've got great coaching and always just Calipari finds a way to get those young blue chip recruits who have one foot out the door to the NBA to get together in March. And Virginia is a great defensive team, but you always wonder if they're going to be able to play enough clutch offense.
Well,
against some of these
it's
teams
tough. I mean, Virginia is 351 out of 351 in terms of pace. They play the slowest style in the entire NCAA, but they're so good at that pack line defense. They just don't allow you to get anything. And if you project this thing out and you get a Virginia-Cincinnati South final, I mean, you talk about a rock fight. First team to 45 in that may win that one. I mean, two bruising teams that really are looking to slow down, and I think Cincinnati's in the 300s as well when it comes to pace. There will be, what's the over under on fast break points in that game? I'll give you 4.5. You want to take the under, I think, on that. So could be a tough one. As far as upsets go, I'm looking in this region at the 7-10. I like Mo Bamba and Texas to go over Nevada, who a nice little mid-major team, but kind of faltered a couple times. Every time it seemed like they would get into the top 25, they would fall out. And Nevada, coached by Eric Musselman, former NBA guy who's actually kind of settled in really nicely. In Nevada, their third season. The Wolfpack have a slight history in terms of being successful in the NCAAs, but I think Texas, Shaka Smart's finally back in the NCAA tournament. Hard to believe it's the first time with Texas. Brought the havoc from VCU down to Lone Star State, and I think Texas has a real chance to knock off Nevada, actually. That's kind of I don't want to say easily, but I could definitely see that being like an 8 to 10 point Texas game.
Yeah, never count on Shaka Smart in tournament time. He knows how to coach these teams and the kind of pace and aggressiveness you need to approach a game like that with. The one that caught my eye out of that bracket, I really like that Loyola Chicago Miami upset. I know it's kind of the trendy one too.
No, but it's a smart one. It's a smart one.
Miami only 1-4 versus top 25 opponents this year. Certainly weren't dominant. Loyola Chicago is a team that comes in 28-5 on the season. They have a couple dynamic offensive players. That's a team that plays with pretty good pace. They beat Florida. Like they didn't play a huge out of conference schedule by any means.
But they got Florida, and there was a vacuum in the Missouri Valley this season when Wichita State left to move to the American, and I don't think too many people were thinking Loyola, a recent newcomer, relatively speaking, used to play in the Horizon and moved all the way up to Missouri Valley. But no, they looked really good, and they had a national stage last Sunday with the Valley Championship game being on CBS, and they're an impressive team, and I think that absolutely Miami, kind of an uninspiring team. Mediocre in the ACC. It's so hard to say whether or not, but it certainly feels like Loyola would be a little bit more excited about the opportunity.
Yeah, we talk about depth of scoring and how important it is a guy like Jalen Adams to show up, because if he doesn't, there's only 2.5, not knowing what Courtney Stocker's status is for Bonaventure, guys who can go out and really lead that team. Loyola has 4 guys averaging double digits points on the season. One guy doesn't show up. Well, that's okay, because we got options. 3 other guys who are going to put the ball in the
All right, Jeff, who's the South champion?
I really do think at the end of the day it's going to be Virginia. I have it going down to Virginia-Cincinnati in that regional final. I think just Virginia is just better enough. I think it's the best Virginia team they've had down there in recent memory, and I think it's going to be tough. I have Arizona and then Cincinnati being their opponents.
Yeah,
I think they got through.
Not sexy, but I agree. Chalk there. I got the top 4 seeds advancing to the Sweet 16, and I do agree with you. Virginia beats Cincinnati in that regional final. Virginia, Tony Bennett finally getting to the Final Four. We move down to the West, and Xavier, the one of the more confusing number 1 seeds for a while. Some weird losses in the year. Kind of, wasn't thrilled with what they did in the Big East tournament, but then nobody else could step up when it looked like maybe North Carolina or Duke could sneak in and grab that 4th number 1 seed. So Xavier, a very weak number 1. Overall, it feels very vulnerable in terms of a team that could be upset.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of the top 8 seeds this year, you usually feel pretty confident about the 1s and at least most of the 2s. There's a couple 2s even this year. They're like, man, on another year where there were more teams that were dominant, those 2s would be 3s. Like a 10-loss North Carolina is a 2. Xavier has the benefit of getting, I think, the easiest road to the Sweet 16 of any of the number 1 seeds. You guys get a play-in 16 seed, and I have zero confidence in Missouri at all, or if they even get past Florida State.
Well, and you say that, I've got the 9, 10, 11, and 12 seeds all winning in this bracket. So I think that this is by far the most wide open. But yeah, if I have Florida State over Missouri, I think the Michael Porter experiment is a weird idea to even attempt this late in the year. I think he loses his 2 collegiate. Well, I guess technically he won his first collegiate game showing up for 2 minutes. But in terms of actually performing, I think, a bad loss to Georgia in the SEC tournament. I think they get bounced here by Florida State, a more experienced team. I like Leonard Hamilton in March. He always seems to be able to at least get to the second round. I love the Jackrabbits over Ohio State in the 12-5 upset special. Ohio State way overachieved. This was a team that wasn't even supposed to come close to contending in the Big Ten. They ended up finishing second. Great job by Chris Holtmann there. Can argue that he may be a National Coach of the Year candidate, but South Dakota State has a lot of tournament experience, and I love that when it comes to this time of year, especially. That's a great matchup for them to have a kind of a, just not a great Ohio State program right now.
Yeah, Mike Dahm is going to be interesting to match up with for Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the 9. I did pick Missouri to be Florida State and then lose to Xavier. I do have the 10, 11, and 12 in this region winning.
Yeah.
So that's South Dakota State, like you mentioned. San Diego State, who's a blazing ball of fire coming into this tournament.
Well, they 22 and 10 overall, but they drew the 5 in the Mountain West because they kind of struggled in conference. They did beat Gonzaga at home in the non-conference, and then they have, in terms of individual game attendance, will Houston and San Diego State and Wichita, Kansas be the least attended first-round game in the entire tournament? I think it's very possible. Good for Calvin Sampson, but boy, they blew their opportunity against Cincinnati in the American final, and I kind of like San Diego State coming in here. I could definitely. I think I got the Aztecs, and we go down to Providence, Texas A&M at 10/7 there again. But Texas A&M, a horrible start in the SEC. They had the great non-conference victories, but they're just sort of a mediocre team. They've really been a 500 team since January. I don't see it with them.
Their big wins are so bizarre to me. Like they lost to Tennessee by 13, beat West Virginia by 23. Split with Kentucky, lost to Kansas, lost to Arizona, beat Auburn by a point. Like they're so all over the place. I think Providence is a more consistent team.
Providence runner-ups lost to Villanova in the Big East final after beating Xavier actually in the semis there, and then I don't think Michigan, North Carolina, North Carolina's the 2, Michigan's the 3, Gonzaga's the 4. I don't see any of those teams really struggling at all when it comes to I don't think any of them are in grave danger of being upset here in the first round. As far as who you got coming out of the West, it's probably the most wide open one, probably the weakest overall in terms of what I see. I've got North Carolina over Gonzaga in the final. What do you got?
I actually have the same thing. I have San Diego State sneaking past into the Sweet 16. I like them a lot. I think they get past Michigan. Michigan is a good tournament team. I think there's always one, and I try to pick at least one double-digit seed to get through because it seems to be the thing that happens. I think that's the one that makes the most sense to me. But yeah, I have North Carolina over Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga has gotten back to the point where they're almost underappreciated again this year.
Yeah,
no one's talking about them.
I would agree with
team,
that.
They're it's not their worst team they've ever put out.
No, the St. Mary's loss at home was kind of weird, and like we said, they did lose to San Diego State. Otherwise, everything is explainable on their schedule, and yeah, I think they're just a program that they play in the West Coast, although it looks like they may be moving to the Mountain West starting next year. I think they're just a program that's arguably the most consistent in the entire country at this point. I mean, now that Wisconsin's dropped out, they're only behind Kansas in terms of most consecutive tournaments made. I think it's super impressive with what Mark Few's been able to do up there in Spokane. But I don't love North Carolina, but I just think that they're going to end up getting to the Final Four for the 3rd consecutive season. Not fun. It is what it is. Let's go to the East. This regional final going out of Boston. Villanova is the number 1 seed, number 2 seed overall in this.
I think LIU Brooklyn has a real shot here.
Yeah. Well, they got to get past Radford.
That's true.
Go Highlanders. I actually really like the 8-9 game in this, Virginia Tech, Alabama.
It's a fun game.
Colin Sexton put on a show and basically took Alabama from the wrong side of the bubble all the way to the 9.
That behind-the-back pass single-handedly knocked them off the bubble.
Just absolutely gorgeous. Virginia Tech, I'm a homer for Buzz Williams ever since when he was Marquette coach and he decided to dance country roads after beating West Virginia in West Virginia. That's an instant win for me, and he will forever be my friend if you mock West Virginia fans like that. It was a pretty great moment. But I that's actually probably my favorite 8-9 game in the entire bracket, and I got Sexton going out there. I really like Alabama, and I think that they can get past Virginia Tech.
I'm torn on this one. This might be one I waffle back and forth in my personal bracket. I have Virginia Tech penciled in for now. Wins against Virginia, Duke, North Carolina, and Clemson. We're all pretty highly seeded tournament teams.
Yeah, Tech's win at Virginia, arguably the best win of any single team in the country this season.
Yeah. Their win and Louisville's inability to win separates a couple different bubble teams here, honestly.
Sure, absolutely.
It all depends on how Colin Sexton and Dante Hall play. If Sexton goes out and he plays like he did in the second round game in the SEC tournament, Alabama could easily win that game by 15-20. Everything he touched was going into the bottom of the net.
Yeah, I agree. Any other games that are interesting? I think this is actually the worst 5-12. I think West Virginia is going to press Murray State into oblivion. I've seen people think, well, West Virginia hasn't played great over the last month or so, but I think they can get past a much less athletic OVC champion, in my opinion.
Yes, it's not the Murray State team of a few years ago that went like 30-3 and gave some teams some trouble.
Yeah, I mean 26-5, not terrible, but nothing really on the marquee that you're going to really hang your hat on. A real boring 7-10, in my opinion. Usually I like those upsets, but I think Arkansas can handle Butler no problem. Purdue sneaking all the way up to the 2 line. Wasn't quite sure if they would get back up there after the loss in the Big Ten final to Michigan, but they're up there, and I think they deserve it.
I have a couple in this regional that I like. This is conditional upon Bonaventure winning. I think Bonaventure has a really good shot at Florida. I think Florida is incredibly overrated. They have a couple of losses that just don't mesh with me, with them being a top team.
You said it, not I, but I wholeheartedly agree, and I would put Bonaventure over Florida.
Yeah, Bonaventure. Of course,
I would put UCLA over Florida too. To be completely
I might
honest.
leave it if UCLA gets in there.
I think the winner of that.
There's always one of those teams that gets out of that first 4, and they've got like the tournament jitters away, and they're playing as a team, and they get going. They roll into some unsuspecting 6th seed. I mean, look at what VCU and Syracuse have done coming out of that first 4.
All but 1 year has at least one of them gotten to the second round off of that. So yeah, no, totally feasible.
Also, got to throw in one real significant numerical upset. I have Stephen F. Austin over Tech.
The Jacks.
They're a team that leads the NCAA in turnovers forced by a significant margin. That is defensive pressure that can cause a lot of havoc for a tournament team. We saw a game like that last year. You think about Northern Iowa down at the end, trying to salt that game away at the end, and they just couldn't get the ball inbounds and it just seemed lost. Tech plays Texas, who plays that kind of up-tempo defense, and Shaka Smart. You're not going to run into a lot of teams in Division I college basketball that play the type of aggressive pressing defense that Stephen F. Austin does, and they have coaching. It's only a couple of years ago that Stephen Walkup led that team to a couple big tournament wins. Mm-hmm. I think they've got a real chance there.
I'm not going to call it, but just be aware that Mike D'Antoni's brother, Dan D'Antoni, is the head coach at Marshall. Marshall is in the 13-4 game against Wichita State. I'm not calling anything, but I do think that is potentially an intriguing 4-13 game. And if you're looking for a 4-13, I would pick that one as the most likely to end up with.
Yeah, I think it's the most likely. I have Wichita State, but I think that's the most likely 13.
What do you got here coming out of the East? Who over who here?
Let's see. We're scrolling down here. I have one a little bit different. I have Purdue. I have Purdue over West Virginia.
Okay.
I think West Virginia is good enough to pressure. It's just so hard to repeat in the tournament. I think Villanova is really talented. They have some of the best players in the country in their backcourt. I think West Virginia can cause enough pressure, and Villanova's only shoot the lights out so many consecutive tournament games. I have Purdue over West Virginia in the East.
And I got Villanova over Texas Tech. I do like the Red Raiders. I know you like Stephen F. Austin there. I think that Chris Beard, hell of a coach. I think he did a really nice job with that program, and I think that they can get all the way to a pretty good position in the Elite Eight. We'll finally go down to the Midwest. Kansas is your 1 seed. Playing these games, we'll go to Omaha, Nebraska. Looking at this bracket, the first game of the tournament, 7-10, Rhode Island, Oklahoma.
It's amazing to me that Oklahoma is even in this tournament.
Yeah, I don't really want to talk about that too much because I definitely think they should be playing in Dayton. But they're not.
Well, I don't even think they should be in Dayton.
Well, you can make an argument that I think enough of their heft of their resume was okay, but will we be having Trae Young stats ran live on CBS during this game?
It's certainly possible. A team that is very lucky to be here. I think after losing to Oklahoma State, an Oklahoma State team that's beat them twice, beat Kansas twice, beat West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that, and you would know as the Bonaventure alum in the room, Rhode Island is not exactly a great matchup for a team like that who's coming in a little cold.
You better be pretty disciplined, and I think that they can essentially shut down everybody else but Trae Young, like everybody else has been doing over the past month and a half in the Big 12. I think Rhode Island handles Oklahoma, and Trae Young, gets his final swan song, and a fascinating career to follow there. I'll be very intrigued by that. Another 5-12, very, very popular one. Not quite as popular as South Dakota State over Ohio State, but New Mexico State, the WAC champions, facing Clemson. Clemson has been on the decline for quite a while now. 23-9, but did a lot of damage early on in the season. Kind of struggled a little bit. They did make it to the ACC semifinals, but kind of got a little bit of a favorable draw there. I think I like the Aggies here.
Yeah, I have Clemson there for now, but
That's
New Mexico State might be one of the hottest teams in the country.
I really
They're certainly
like-
not going to be an easy out. And they do limit their opponents to pretty solid, under 64 points a game.
Yeah.
So
Defensive metrics.
And they beat Miami in the regular season.
They did
by the
beat
way,
Miami
In case
as
you're
well.
wondering why I don't think Miami's going to win their game.
And that was a neutral site. I believe that was out in Hawaii. The only other real interesting game to me in the first round, it feels like a lot of these are going to be blowouts. Although Charleston, Auburn, SEC regular season champions, Bruce Pearl. This one will probably be also vacated eventually, but for now he's still around. To me, I don't know. Again, I could see a 13 over a 4 here as well. I know I mentioned Marshall over Wichita State. You can make a case here for Charleston too over Auburn.
I think so. I have to go into a 4-5, and I'd be sad if it does. I think that's going to be a rough 4-5 game of a couple teams that are kind of stumble and bumble on their way into the tournament.
Yeah, a great football game. Not quite sure as much. It just looks weird to see. And, of course, in San Diego. So a beautiful tribute to the Holiday Bowl there. Other than that, I mean, it's Kansas, Duke, Michigan State as your top 3 seeds, and it definitely feels like those, especially in the bottom of the bracket, Michigan State and Duke are inevitably going to be rematching in Omaha from their previous game earlier at the Champions Classic.
Nothing would make me happier than Rhode Island beating Duke so that the tournament doesn't get that game they clearly set up for themselves.
It was clearly designed to be the marquee matchup of it. And I'll say I got Sparty coming out of the Midwest.
Yeah.
I like Sparty over Kansas. I think in the Midwest final is once again Kansas is given a cake assignment when it comes to the geography and just can't quite get to the Final Four.
Yeah, I have the same thing there. Tom Izzo led a team that might have been considered at points of the season to be the best team in Division I college basketball. I think they get it. I think Duke is good. I don't think Duke is that good. How many times will Grayson Allen get himself in trouble, get flagrant fouls for throwing his ass around in the tournament? God only knows. But I think Michigan State is just a little bit better than Kansas.
So who you got in your finals? Who over who in San Antonio?
Yeah,
April
I have
2nd?
Virginia over North Carolina and Michigan State over Purdue to get to the championship game.
Conference rivals battle to the death.
And then I have Virginia in a super close, highly contested defensive game. They make you pick your final score.
That's
bracket
fine.
challenge. I have 65-62 Virginia.
I got Virginia as well making it to the championship game against Michigan State. I like Michigan State. I think they come from the 3 spot. I think that a weird year in Michigan State's entire university. Kind of a gross year, but if I'm looking for a team, it's not a sentimental thing. I just think that they may be positioned. I don't know. Just feels like the type of year where Izzo kind of can rally everybody around. So I got Michigan State over Virginia in the finals, but It's the NCAA tournament, man. It's the greatest sporting event in North America. Sports, it's the best thing, and everybody should watch it.
I hope my bracket gets absolutely destroyed by the middle of the day on Thursday because all the crazy upsets are happening that I didn't predict.
That's the goal. So let's bring Mike and Justin back in here, guys. I know you were just downstairs making a couple smoothies. Coming on back. Mike, what does basketball mean to you? Let's get deep here. Let's go philosophical to conclude here tonight.
I used to like playing basketball as a kid.
All right, you used to like it as a kid. Justin, were you ever a basketball player?
I played at BSAC for about 4.5 seconds, and I said,
Okay.
"This is stupid."
All right.
And then I stopped.
Wow.
I played in gym class often.
Sure.
My
Mandatory
younger
fun.
years.
Yeah.
Got the good. Got a decent J.
Actually, to be honest, I'd like to go to a college basketball game sometime.
I have a great place you should go to.
Where's that?
Is it down in Olean?
Yeah, it was a fun atmosphere. No, I'm kidding. No, I would say if you ever get the opportunity to go to the NCAA tournament, do it. I went twice in Buffalo, once in Syracuse. It was a blast.
Odds are they're probably
anytime.
back next year, I would guess.
Say that again?
They're probably back here next year, I think.
No, they just came
3
out.
years?
3 or 4 years usually. There's like there's a 3-year bidding cycle. So, but no, Buffalo has been a great host for was it 7 times, 6 or 7 times now they've hosted the first and second rounds. So people really enjoy the area. They seem to be a great host every time. But yeah, it starts the first 4 on True TV, and then everything gets going for realsies on CBS on Thursday afternoon. And like we said, the Rhode Island Oklahoma very, very super intriguing game that they started off the bracket with. I believe that tips at 12:10. So it's wall-to-wall college basketball for 96 straight hours. It's really fun.
It's the best time to be a sports fan.
We are setting up a TV in my office at work.
Very good. And I think that's part of it, too. It's just,
I mean, I also legitimately just took Friday off.
yeah. Well, we usually have CNBC over playing on mute in our area, and we'll actually put on CBS for that.
Gonna find True TV?
No, we're not going to find True TV. Well, yeah, unfortunately.
It's the time of the year that everyone Googles what channel is True TV.
Oh, nothing like a True TV. What is this? It's like where do I find NBCSN on my cable dial? I'm so confused by technology. Doesn't make any sense. Yeah, remember, True TV was like court TV, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's basically just cops and Impractical Jokers.
Yeah. Oh, a huge Impractical Jokers fan. Yeah, and the Magicians, right? I thought
Carbonaro Effect.
that's the one. Is that show still on? I don't know. It's been a while.
It won't be on the 4 days I'm watching it, that's for sure.
No, it's hey, if it's true, it must be True TV. So that'll do it. 716 Sports Podcast previewing the NCAA tournament.
Satellite podcast,
the DLC. This was like Sonic the Hedgehog getting a Chaos Emerald, or Mega Man with his Mega Blaster defeating Dr. Wily again. I'm trying to go with any more. Let's see, video game references. Metroid,
Let's go home.
Bomberman.
You're already home.
Let's stop this.
All right,
You guys go home.
all right. We love you guys.
He's
Talk to you
kicking us
soon.
out.
Thank you.